Hi, I'm Dr. Barbara Becker Holstein, originator of the Enchanted Self and creator of the Selfie Project, and we'll be talking about both tonight. We have some amazing guests. I'm going to just talk about them very briefly and then give you some background in the Enchanted Self and the Selfie Project. My guests include, I have to go to a foreign land first because I'm so excited. I just can't hold back. On Skype tonight, we have a young lady, Lynn, who is here from Vietnam. Hi.
Good evening. Yeah, it's my honor to be here on the podcast show, and I look forward to engaging myself in the fruitful discussions today.
Thank you. We'll be back. We'll be back. And Ilana, who is here in school, I guess high school in Monmouth County, and she has been in one of my films, Conflict. She also shows up in a film we're just finishing called The Medium. Woo, woo, woo. And she'll hopefully be in my next film. And then we have Dr. Sandra Prince-Embury, who is a resiliency expert specialist, licensed psychologist, unbelievably bright, insightful person who's here, and a very good friend. That helps. All right, so back to the Enchanted Self and the Selfie Project. The Enchanted Self started when I was a psychologist just treating people in the treatment room and became convinced that women were hiding some of the best of themselves, that they underappreciated themselves, they put themselves down or they put others first, they fatigued out. And these are not things that I was making up. These were things that they were sharing with me one way or another through their case studies and about themselves as they talked in therapy. And the other thing that happened was really a revelation when I interviewed women who were not in my practice. They also had all these issues of secret messages when they were a child, like, you better get married. What else are you really going to do with yourself? You're not that smart. Johnny is, our son Johnny, he's amazing. We'll get the money if he wants to go to medical school. And, these were real things, real messages. But at the same time, the women who were not in my practice, I kind of edged them on to keep talking about what was right about themselves and what they had pleasure in doing in life, what they enjoyed, when they had fun. And it turned out that they had this whole secret other side of themselves that they almost didn't know how to put in words, whether it was a wonderful garden that they grew, but they didn't really talk about it, and or something just silly that they loved to dance alone in the living room when nobody was home. They had lots of ways of having fun and feeling good, and they kept them sometimes very secretive because family members can be your cruelest critics. Oh yeah, I see you dancing. You look better 40 pounds ago when I first met you. These people are cruel. They can be cruel. So I decided to devote myself as a psychologist to helping people feel better about themselves and recognize their talents and strengths and their ambitions and their potential. And this started a lot of my work. I'm not going to take you through all of it because we want to focus on my guests and some of the film clips. But it led eventually to me focusing a lot on kids and tweens and teens, and I was a school psychologist for so many years. The product that finally came out in that area were two books. One was The Truth, and the other was Secrets. Well, The Truth is the first book, and Secrets is the second book. And they're still on the market and put out now by Sky Pony Press. And they tell the story of a girl who keeps a diary And it is her story, everything that she feels and thinks and worries about. And that bridges into the Selfie Project because it suddenly came to me. I shouldn't say, I'm not telling it quite truthfully. Actually, a lot of little miracles happened, leading me to write a play version of this book, The Truth. Sandy, you've been there many times.
Absolutely.
When readings took place for this play version. And Bob Angelini, who became the director of the play version, led me in a kind of, somehow in our rooting together, we met other people and some young actresses because he was directing a play at that time, Anne Frank. And literally it flew into my head the idea of taking the truth and making a short film out of it. And then as I watched the young lady, Cassidy Terracinio, who was playing the star in Anne Frank, I said to myself, any young woman who can play Anne Frank, she could practically, do my book half asleep, but it would just be so marvelous. And she did it, and that was the first film, and we've actually had her on this show. So how does that lead to the Selfie Project? Well, actually, it does start with Cassidy because she was the first person to film a lot of her own scenes with her own smartphone using the camera. And we used those scenes with a little bit of B-roll thrown in. And we made a 16-minute film that has been in many festivals and won a prize for the best pop song, On the Edge of Something New, by Jane Sorelli. And it was very exciting. But, okay, so I shouldn't say but. There's been a series of films. There still was this nagging question in me. I think for any of you that think outside the box and kind of consider yourself creative, you know that feeling when you feel you haven't quite got there. There's something else that has to be done. And what began to bubble up into me is that selfies are not only a way to make selfie films that are really authentic and intense because people are filming themselves and they don't have a whole bunch of crew watching. But selfies are a window to your soul, so to speak, like your eyes are. They give people a chance to speak with a voice that might otherwise not be heard, or not heard well, I should say, or not understood. You can make a selfie of yourself where you can speak from the heart, but if your husband or your son or a friend said to you, how do you feel today? You might say, fine, how are you? You're not going to reveal certain levels. You're just not going to go there. And the privacy of the selfie and then the decision whether it can be public is a marvelous tool into helping people have a voice. And in our society, well, who are the groups that need the voice most? I would say kids, tweens and teens, and senior citizens. In between, if you're alive and well and you're functioning pretty well, you have your health, you have your, usually in our society, you can get a job if you wish to get a job and you've had some training in something. The middle group has lots of problems and issues and they're always exhausted, but it's the voice. It's the voice of teenagers and kids and seniors. Well, I haven't got to seniors yet, but I'm very interested in the voice, what really is on kids' minds. So what I first want to show is the little promotional trailer. It's only 30 seconds that goes with the first venture that's clearly not drama film, which my selfie films are drama films. This is selfie entranceway into kids sharing what's really on their minds with different problems. And the first pilot we did was around friend drama. So
today's teens face issues that other generations didn't face. Technology, social media, drugs and alcohol, bullying, stresses and anxiety that result in depression and sometimes even worse. Here, teens express their candid thoughts about issues in a new way of communicating through their uncensored selfies. These selfies are not scripted. They are real teens and they are real problems.
Is a young actress, Katie Leclerc, who lives out in California doing the voice. She
Today's teens face issues that other generations didn't face.
Yeah. She starred in a series called, I think it was called Changing Places. And she was supposed to have been a baby in a hospital that was given to the wrong parent and vice versa. They were exchanged. And we're thrilled that she was willing to do the voiceover. So any reactions from Lynn, Elena, or Sandy about the trailer before we go on?
I think the trailer shows...
Well, I didn't actually review the video, but I love the voice of the actress, and I think it's going to be a very great movie. The promotional video is great.
Thank you.
I agree. I like the trailer a lot. I like how it portrays how the selfies really were and the individual girls who made them. I really like that.
Good. Well, that leads me right to the next step, because we're now going to show the selfie that you actually produced for this show. And then, do you want to say anything about it before or afterwards?
I guess
I
before...
think it's
Wait, 1 second, Lynn.
I will talk about it later.
Who are you speaking to?
I'm speaking to Elena for a second. Okay? Go ahead.
Right, so yeah, this selfie was based mostly on my personal life, but I also added in little things that other people might be facing too. And mine was just about the beginnings of dating, because I'd never dated before, and I think I'm able to share a few things with other people who've never dated too. So
Absolutely.
it'll be great for them to see too.
Were you trying to say something, Lynn? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, sorry.
No? Okay. We're going to go ahead and now see this selfie, which you made at home, right? In your bedroom? Or?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
I need your advice. This is really important. So, do you know how a few days ago Mike and I discovered that we liked each other? So, just today, we went on our first date. Just to see how it would go, see what would happen. But this is gonna sound really odd. I feel like before that we knew that we both kind of liked each other, that little spark in me for him was a lot stronger than it was now. And I have no idea why. So this is what happened. So we just went down into the back, into those woods, and we were just fooling around, having fun, walking around, exploring, having good conversation. And eventually we reached the top of that hill where there are no trees, where you can see the city down beyond, where it's really pretty at night. But because there are no trees up there, it was so windy. The wind was just blowing and gusting. It was freezing. So we both just sat on the bench on top, and we were both like, wow, our hands are really cold. So we just kind of touched our hands to see how cold they were. And he went and just kind of curled his fingers around my fingers. And I didn't realize exactly what was happening at first, so I just drew my hand away, and I was like, this is kind of awkward. And he said, yeah. But obviously it wasn't, because I am absolutely sure now that he was trying to hold my hand. And I didn't know what to think of that, because no one's ever held my hand before, not romantically or anything. And I was just so uncertain at that point. I didn't know what to say or what to think, because I'd never been on a date before. But I'm really upset, because I probably upset him because I'm uncertain, but it's not even him, it's me, because I don't know what I'm doing.
think we could stop it there. That's good. Sandy, our resiliency expert,
Yes.
how would you like to chat a little bit for a minute or two around the whole dating and Elena's ability to share some of those vulnerable feelings at first and so on?
Well, I think you were very articulate in
Stay
sharing.
close to your...
I think you were very articulate in speaking about your experience.
Thank you.
And yes, that is definitely an experience that a young woman would have. And I don't know that I would necessarily have an answer to it. Do you have any thoughts in retrospect about it now? How that went down and how you handled yourself in the situation?
I do. So that was back when I went on my first date, and that was with my now boyfriend. I don't know if he's watching, but hi, Steven.
Okay, so what did you learn in watching that and comparing it to how you feel now?
What I really learned from even just that first date was that I'm like a head thinker, not so much as a heart thinker normally, but when you're on a date, like I learned that it's not so much using your head as it is just like feeling with your heart. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And literally just going with the flow. Like
Yes.
It's such a cliche saying, but people say it because it's literally what you have to do. And by doing that, we were able to progress, you know?
Okay, and how did you do that? Did you speak to each other about the awkward feelings, or what did you do?
We did a little bit. And then we just kept going on more dates. And I told myself, I'm like, don't think with your head, feel with your heart, because I'm so much of a head thinker.
Okay.
And yeah, we just kept going, and here we are.
Well, I think the issue of how you handle head versus heart or feelings, that comes from two different systems, which are very important in problem solving and preparing for any situation. And your head, which is your ability to think rationally, might have been used or could be used in other situations by anticipating what might come up.
Yeah.
And maybe talking to your mom or an older sister or some girlfriends about what to expect if there is such a thing as expectations on a first date. And then that would give your head, your rational processing, a chance to think about different alternative responses and how you would want to proceed. So that's one system. And it's better to try to do that ahead of time with your thinking system, because once the emotions come up and your heart comes up, then that pretty much may take over. Not all people, but for some people, that just, it's a rush of emotions. And young people have said to me that their brain freezes or their head freezes up and they can't come up with any thoughts at all. But it's important to have that emotional response, because that is what tells you how you feel, and you certainly have to use that in coming up with an equation of what you're planning to do in the situation. Right.
So that's a great help to remember these different steps and not to get too wrecked as we slide through the adventures of life. I've been wrecked many times, believe me. Lynn, what do you think seeing this? Lynn?
Well, actually, I can relate to it very significantly, because I think that when you have a crush on somebody or when you fall in love, especially when you face that person directly, you can get really confused. And like you said, at that moment, your brain like freezes and you don't know how to approach that person anymore in that situation. But I think that when you engage yourself in a emotional attachment or something, there's a great combination between rational thinking and very, very, very emotional, spiritual feelings. And I think that's great because it allows you to approach a situation in a logical and appropriate way without even losing some of its great emotional part, which is amazing. Yeah.
I want to bridge this with how Lynn and I met and one of the 3 videos that you sent, because you sent a video, a selfie, which was really about relationships. So how we met is, well, tell them how we met, Lynn, with a little book.
Well, yeah, okay. It's actually a long story, but to cut the story short, actually, my mother bought me Dr. Barbara's book when I was in grade 5. I was a twin at that time, and I had very little knowledge about the world. So the book was like it was a very beautiful surprise to me. And I spent a lot of time during my primary school years reading it. And after I finished with the book, I realized that there were a lot of like engaging and thought-provoking questions at the end of the book. And it was so amazing that Dr. Barbara had left her email address at the end of the book so that the young readers could write to her and talk to her about those questions she put it in. So I basically wanted to actually contact her by phone, but then my mother said that no, it's going to be really expensive if you try to call a person from Vietnam to America. And that's why my mother encouraged me to write an email to Dr. Barbara. Wow. And it's the beginning of our story. I started writing to her, introducing myself, and I remember calling the girl in the book Funny. I gave her a very pretty name. And yeah, and it was so fantastic to receive Dr. Barbara's response after a few days. I was really surprised because I never thought that such a eminent author would write back to me, a girl from Vietnam, which is so far away from the United States where she lives. So yeah, we began to correspond with each other from that moment on, and I'm really blessed to have been involved in this really great journey with Dr. Barbara and sharing so many things.
Well, it's been equal for me. It's been very moving, and we have a lot of letters that have gone back and forth and things we've talked about and tried to explain from our different cultures and religions and all sorts of things. And
I can attest to the excitement
Yes.
of it. I've heard about Lynn for many years.
yes, that's right. And it's just been, well, Lynn has given me the honor of calling me Grandma, which,
so cute.
you know, so
Honor
it's,
to your granddaughter.
yes, you are my 5th grandchild. It's been very, very special. I'd like to play Lynn's second, the one we said is number 2, because she discusses relationships in there, beyond even the crush, some of the nuances of relationships.
Sounds
Well, I'm really blessed to be able to stay in a long-term relationship, which is really special and meaningful for me. I began writing letters to Dr. Barbara when I was in grade 5. After reading her book, which is the truth, I felt really satisfied with it, and I decided to write to her to discuss in depth the issues I think that cropped up during my reading journey. So, when you stay in a long-distance relationship with a person you have never met directly before, it can be very difficult sometimes. You may have some trust issues, and at times you may ask yourself these questions. Is this person I'm talking to reliable? Will I be able to manage it over a long period of time? Will I be patient enough to just correspond with this person over a enduring time frame without growing bored of that, without being carried away by my hectic schedule so much that I forgot completely about that person. So that kind of questions will immediately spring to your mind when you stay in that kind of relationship. But I believe that a long-term relationship, a long-distance relationship with a person that you know very little about, but that you have a very connection, or in my case, a very special connection, or in my case, the connection that was created by a book is really special, and it's really neat. It is really necessary for this world. Why? Because it helps you believe more in the power, in the connection power of this world. You may feel that previously the world is only restricted to your hometown, to the people in your circle of acquaintances around you. But when you develop this nurturing relationship with that person from across the world, you feel that, wow, this world is so big, and you have a very different idea of connection. You step out of your comfort zone and you begin to discover the world in its entirety. Sometimes it's all about connection. It's all about your decision to engage with a person that's so different to you in terms of race, ethnicity, or social background. But you overcome all those boundaries in order to relate to that person. And in the long term, you feel like you have transformed in a more fulfilled and a more comprehensive person, because you have bravely taken the decision to get out and talk to a person you have never met before, but you know that you are destined to meet and talk to him or her.
Well, I think that particular 2 minutes reminds me so much of some very significant relationships. One with my husband. You know, who's more different than a male and a female? It's like, I mean, you're crossing the continents of life, and for me, one of the most traumatic things that happened when we were courting is I finally got up the nerve, and I said to him something like, "Do you want to see my poetry?" And he said, "I don't really like poetry." And I was crushed. I mean, these were poems I had started when I was 14. I was now 22. I mean, every deep emotion I had ever thought I had thrown into one of these poems. And this young fellow thought he had a chance with me. You know, I mean, it's like, how stupid could he, you know?
Oh my God.
You know? But somehow we do have a chance with each other. Isn't it amazing how we have so many chances in life with friends, with relatives, with neighbors, with people, you know, we are pen pals with that we have yet to meet face to face. So jump right in, either of you.
Well, I just want to comment. Well, there's so many levels to the importance of relationships, but what's jumping out here from Lynn, what you have spoken of, and what Dr. Barbara has been able to do is the persistence and hanging in there quality. And I just, in my studies and also in the literature, that is a very important quality to have as a person and to use as a person. That you will find that will. I'm an expert in resiliency, but I don't want to get theoretical about that whole thing, but certainly relationship and relatedness is a core part of resiliency. And particularly, I'm now coming to realize the capacity to hang in there with old friends. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be friends forever with everyone that you meet, or be friends forever with everyone that you have a sort of passing interest in common with. But for those people who you share very significant life experiences with and who you want to keep that history and connectedness alive, I think it's very important to be able to do that and put the energy into it. And I think with today, with transiency and popular culture, popular Western culture that is, sometimes it's easy to get distracted from that, but it's important to keep that in mind.
I agree with having those close kind of connections with people. I feel like that's really important to have because you can share and exchange your experiences and you can learn from each other too. And it's great just to have that correct connection with people, be it through religion, your past experiences, or just goodness from the heart too. I think that's just really important to have.
Yep.
I think this whole concept of energy is so important. There are certain friends that I've known, since I was in college, different roommates, where the energy source is so vital when we connect that I've actually gone into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror, and my face is aglow the way I think it probably was when I was 18 or 19. So much has been stimulated at the neurological level by the contact. And yet there are other people where I've made an effort. I'm sure this has happened to everybody. And for one reason or another, there's some sort of, passive, slightly indifferent response. It doesn't really go anywhere. And I've probably given that to certain people too. And energy is really a vital component. And we don't talk enough about it in our culture.
Very true. Very true.
So there's another, what I want to do now is play the two things. One is the the one that would be number 3 for Lynn, because Lynn talks about friend drama in her own way from Vietnam, and that ties into the whole topic of friend drama that we did in the Selfie Project in the sample pilot. So I think that would be interesting. You picked, before we go to Lynn, explain a little bit. It may not really sound like friend drama what you picked, but from your point of view, it was friend drama about the boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So let's play Lynn's third one, and then we will, I want to play the last one I gave you, which was from Megan, who's not here tonight, but who's been
We actually have to say that we're deeply honored and fortunate to be able to live in a very peaceful political climate. So as students in our schools, we don't actually fall victim to really serious matters that concern directly the life and death of people, like gun violence or issues of that kind. However, we do have some other serious issues that, when compared to gun violence, for example, may not seem really alarming to you, but in my personal opinion, are actually detrimental in the long term. The first problem we have here is the usual formation of cliques in classes. By clique, I mean groups that have really narrow interests and they don't want other people to join them because they feel that their personalities are so different from others. So here in my class, I studied at a major high school in our hometown, so the academic environment we had there is really healthy. But in one class, for example in my class, I felt that we didn't actually stand united together because we have a lot of different small groups that only concerned about their hobbies, their leisure pursuits, their interests, and we feel like there's not a thread that can combine all those groups together. So when you step to class, you feel like everything is so loosely connected. And as students in that class, sometimes we feel really isolated from each other, and as a result, we didn't have really fulfilling experiences after graduating from high school. The second problem is that a lot of students here in Vietnam lack the career orientation. So even after they graduate from high school, they don't know what they should study for university. And they only choose the universities according to their rankings and their fame, their reputation, instead of making an informed choice based upon their natural inclination and interest, because they don't know what to pursue at all. We don't have a lot of opportunities to learn about ourselves and to experiment with a wide range of activities that may allow us to find our true calling. So the consequence is that we begin our university journey feeling completely disoriented, and I believe that is very undermining.
So, in this particular selfie, we see not a coming together of connectedness. We see a fragmentation because there's too much separateness going on. And in the very short little selfie that Megan did, Megan Brown, you're going to see a separation between her spiritual needs and the way the minister is handling things.
Barbara, would it be possible for me to comment to Lynn's selfie that she just did?
Yeah, I wanted to just do both so we could then
Okay.
talk about both together, and if that's okay.
I don't know that thought will
All right, go
pertain
ahead
to
with the
both.
thought.
Lynn, I wanted to say that what you are talking about with clicks is actually very common for tweens and preteens and teenagers, and there's a developmental reason for that, because it's the time when youth start to separate from their family psychologically, and the family has been sort of the personality anchor for them. And as they do separate and try to become their own person, it's a kind of a shaky experience. And so what they tend to do is hone in and cluster with other kids they think are like them out of security needs. And the more insecure the individuals, the more they need to feel clustered and stuck with this group so that their identity, they think, is protected. So yes, it can be unfortunate, but it is a part of normal development. Now, if people, the more secure the individual, the less need to be stuck with their peers to the point of not being more accepting of others. And so that's something that you can keep in mind when you're observing this. If there were a situation that would come in and relax everyone, like humor, and bring out the fact that everyone can share humor, that might have the effect of loosening up this clickiness, which is based on insecurity.
That's interesting. I never knew about it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you overrode me and spoke, because that is critical information.
I thought it was important to know.
It really is. And the spiritual development that everyone should and needs to go through to find comfort with the great unknown and with prayer and whatever else they need to establish as part of their lives also is, something your parents typically give you some of it when you're small, maybe a lot of it. But there comes the day where you've got to do some of the putting together. And not always are there people there at the right time.
Right.
So, okay, we can go ahead with that one.
Dad said we needed more religion in our lives, so now we go to the worldwide universal ministry, and I don't like the minister at all. He doesn't even talk about things that apply to me, or kids my age.
Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
I really want to know why things hurt so much, or why wars still go on, why all these kids are dying of overdoses and making bad decisions, and what happens when you die. But no, all he tries to tell us is, remember, King David had great struggles. So?
That's it.
Okay. You want responses?
Sure.
Well, I think that, in fact, I had a client today where this issue came up. So I'm just going to respond from that. And this is a young woman who is experiencing transition from college to home, home to college, college to home, and separation from parents a bit, and got shaken up to the point where there were anxieties coming up around a lot of different issues, but basically her core was shaken because of transitions in her life and the absence of regular stability figures. And at that point, she, in her wisdom, started thinking, well, I don't really have a good spiritual foundation. My family really wasn't anchored in one particular religion, and I kind of feel like if I had something like that now, I wouldn't feel so shaky. So it sort of highlights the link between feeling stable, what can get you off your game and throw you off, and how spirituality can be a healing, cohesive force if it's available to you
In the right way.
in the right
Yes,
way.
yes.
And so, but there needs to be the people there to help you process.
Yes. Which brings up that we need people who can help us process our entire lives, not just in childhood, but processing aging, processing all sorts of transitions that happen later in life. But, you just fell into the one video that Lynn, we didn't get to play yet from Lynn now, because this video where you pick the passage that you enjoyed in the book and you share it with us, we're going to play that video, shows how important figures that love us are
Absolutely.
constantly in our lives, or friends. So we'll play that.
Sorry, if I just may go back to Megan's
Yes.
selfie for 1 minute.
Yes, absolutely.
I actually really like that one a lot because she said her dad thinks they need more religion in their lives. I totally understand that because religion is just a concept that brings people together. It's what people believe. It's their whole universe, their whole world, and that really connects people and brings them such a greater understanding of some huge concepts to
Right.
people.
Right.
But
Provides a framework.
yeah, that too.
Yeah.
And then she went on to say that it doesn't solve all of her questions, like why are there still wars? Why are people dying of drug overdoses? Like
Right.
that doesn't necessarily still answer that question. I don't know. It was just really interesting
Yes.
for me to think about.
Good.
Good,
Yeah.
good. That's what we want. We want. We want.
Yeah.
We
Some
want.
Thinking.
We
Yes.
want.
Yes.
We want thinking. We want to
Yes.
have a voice, and we want to have thought, and of course our emotions too.
Yes, it's really
Yes.
thought-provoking.
Okay. Good.
Hi, my name is Ling and I come from Vietnam. I began reading The Truth, which is a very interesting book for twin girls, when I was in grade 5. And if you ask me what is the best part of the book that you remember most up until now, I would say that I really cherish the scene during which the girl decided to wear her mother's clothes and looked at herself endlessly in the mirror, feeling so great about it. Well, I personally really love that episode because I think that I see myself in the girl in that situation. As a little girl, honestly, I was in the habit, which is a little bit guilty, of taking away my mother's clothes from the closet and then don them in the afternoons during which my mother was not at home. Why do I derive so much pleasure from doing that? Well, as a child, I often dreamed of becoming adults as soon as possible. I was so curious about what mature people often do in society. I desire to have their privileges, which is the right to go home late without being scolded by your parents, which is the right to do whatever you love without being restricted by your by other adults' expectations about you. And I think that wearing your mother's clothes sometimes is a very fascinating way to discover yourself. Personally, I guess it's the very first stage in the process of exploring what you like to wear and defining your fashion statement. Every girl should know how to make herself beautiful sometimes according to her own taste. And I think that trying out your mother's clothes is a very great way to doing it.
Thank you. That's so incorporates, maybe more than many of the lectures and so on. Obviously, there has to be already a devotion and a significant attachment to even want to put on your mother's clothes. And it's good. We do practice finding ways to solidify our sense of self. We have to.
And it is symbolically taking the role of the other in a very concrete sense. In other words, you can't be your mom for the day, but you can look like her and therefore pretend and take on the role of an older maternal person who you love.
What are you thinking? I see your brain going.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really interesting. Just having your mother's clothes on. You kind of like. I'm just thinking about what I would do if I was in my mom's clothes. Like, I look at myself in the mirror and I would think about like how her life is, like how she is as a mom, how her job is, and the freedom she has and the struggles she has as like a working adult and a mom. It's interesting to think about.
Absolutely.
Well, my mother had a special routine that was always saved from me having a fever and being sick. And that is that she would take out all of her jewelry and she would put it on the bed where I was reclining to recover. And we would line it up in rows like it was a real jewelry store. And then we would sell jewelry to each other.
That's adorable. I've never heard that.
So maybe that's why I'm sitting here with my funky earrings and my silly bracelet. And, well, this is my enchanted self heart that goes with the project. But, yeah, I couldn't wait. I mean, it just was the most wonderful hour.
Well, there's different ways that can present itself. With my mom, I know that she loved placemats and tablecloths and fancy napkins for her table. And so now I have a little bit of a fetish for that myself. I'm not doing it for company or for parties. I'm doing it because I just like to put the little mat down and the little napkins and see how beautiful it is. So I'm sharing a part of her and what gave her joy, even though she's no longer with me.
Yeah. Well, we're coming close to the last few minutes, and I wonder, Lynn, could you explain to the American audience the type of schooling you're going to now have the next few years? It sounds so fascinating. The college you're going to go to, and could you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, sure. I'm really willing to. This autumn, I'm entering Fulbright University, Vietnam, which is a liberal arts college funded by the American government. And it's the first of its kind here in Vietnam. I'm really, really excited about it because in our university, we don't have definite majors that's decided for students the first time. We will still step into the school, and then we spend 1 year, which is called the co-design year, with the faculty members to devise a whole fascinating curriculum for the next years of university. And that will be a mixture of both academic pursuits and extracurricular activities. I'm really looking forward to it because it will be my first time of engaging on such a self-deciding journey. We get to do our favorite things, and we have to discover our passions. And after this co-design year, we'll have 4 years of academic intensity in order to fulfill our potential and to decide on a career path we actually to like to go according to which. And yeah, that's my plan for the autumn this year, and I just can't wait to share my experiences with you when I actually embark on it.
Oh, I can't wait. That sounds wonderful. Will you live away from home or at home?
Oh, I'll be living in Ho Chi Minh City, which is really far away from Hải Phòng City I'm living in. It's in the south of Vietnam. So basically, I'm moving in the dormitory with my friends, and I'll be staying really, really far away from my parents, which is I think it'd be funny because I have grown so accustomed to living in the bosom of our family,
Yes.
my mother, my father, my little brother. But I think it's time I actually went out there, step out of my comfort zone, and sail into uncharted territory to discover who I'm really am and to follow my passions.
Wonderful. Isn't that exciting?
Yes,
It
it
is,
is.
that's great.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I relate too. Going into like college and everything like that, it's I still just haven't grasped the concept that I'm almost a legal adult.
What year are you going into?
Senior.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
17 right now.
Okay. So you're not going for another year.
You'll go away in another year.
Is that
Yep.
correct?
Any
Yeah.
thoughts whether you will move away or try to stay locally?
I'm unsure. It depends on a lot of different factors too. Because I know if I stay in state, I'll get tuition. But I also kind of want to go out of state and just see other places too, just to see how they run. And I think just staying at a college far away from everything else would be really cool to do. Meet new people, see new places, maybe discover new passions, like you said. And I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have one, given that I've had to just today discussions about this topic with one of my clients. I think it's a good idea to have family discussions before you actually make the departure to college, because it's important that people know how they feel, because it's a major transition point in a family when a child goes off to college, especially if it's at a distance. It represents a transition, a change, and even very positive changes have emotional impact. So it's important that everybody get a chance to share their feelings ahead of time rather than wait to see what happens after the fact.
Yes, absolutely. I want to draw this to a close by reminding people that we've been talking about the enchanted self, which is the most powerful part of yourself that can access your own well-being and happiness for the rest of your lives once you know how to keep bringing it back.
That's a
That's-
key,
yes,
key,
yes.
key piece.
And that we're moving into the Selfie Project to give kids, teens, and tweens a voice to authenticate themselves and discuss their needs and problems so that solutions can be reached. Something like school violence in our country, a terribly serious problem with guns being easily acceptable. The last time it happened, the major last time, many kids across the United States said, that's it, that's enough. And a lot of them are turning 18. There's a serious feeling that kids themselves are realizing their voices must be heard, not only for their own mental health, but for the sacred nature of the country we believe in as a democracy, the United States. So anyway, and this can include Lynn. Did Lynn go off? Or anyway, Lynn also, I'm looking for kids to make selfies where they discuss a problem or an idea or their feelings or a topic like friend drama or growing up and moving away from home, whatever it is. And they get in touch with me so we can include them on selfiefilmmakers.com and maybe on this show, like we're doing today. So anyone who wants to get in touch with me, it's barbara.holstein@gmail.com. Pretty simple. And this I'm not kidding. You know, I'm not kidding.
She's not kidding.
I think I was the first psychologist that went on record again and again in my little essays on the web and stuff that selfies have tremendous potential for good, and don't just say they're narcissistic, you jerk. You know, let's see what they're good for, and they're good for so many things.
That's so true.
So, thank you, Lynn, for joining us. I hope it will not be the last time, but the first time.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this show, and it's been a great pleasure to talk here about so many different topics. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Pleasure meeting you.
Great to meet you.
And thank you, Ilana and Elena. And I feel so ashamed of myself when I don't pronounce names right.
Oh,
That's
don't
okay.
be silly.
I totally get it.
You know, and Sandra. And we usually sign off pretty close. We have 2 minutes. Any last comments either of you want to make?
Well, I'm just very pleased to see how this unfolded, and I want to congratulate Dr. Holstein for pulling this together and for her persistence in pursuit of things that she knows are important, whether they've been recognized in the field of psychology or not. Dr. Holstein is a role model for me in believing in your own instincts and being persistent and staying with what you believe in. Thank you, Dr. Holstein.
Thank you, Dr. Prince-Embury.
I completely agree. It's been a real pleasure to be here. This is a great experience for me, too. I really like how this is rolling along, and I'm excited to hopefully be in future things with you.
Good. Thank you. I can't wait. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.